watching online?
Just our name. I'm Heidi Emberling. I'm current president of the Palo Alto School Board.
I'm Todd Collins, a candidate for school board.
I'm Melissa Baton-Caswell. I am a member of the school board.
Jennifer DiBrienza, candidate for the school board.
My name is Jay Blas Jacob Cabrera, candidate for the school board.
Thank you all for being here. And before we even... It really speaks to my vision and the work that I'm doing. I feel like we need to evolve and transform our educational system to be relative to the current economic situation we have in the world. The most important of which is that all kids should literally be learning computer coding as a language, starting at least in 3rd grade, if not earlier, and basically take it your entire life. And that would, in the context of that, you're learning it as a language, just as Spanish or English or any other language. This is just basic, important information that all students are going to need for the future in their careers. From there, the other thing I want to see is I want to see us rethink our educational systems to be more open and really accessible to the unique individual in each person. And obviously we have to do testing, we have to do standardized testing, but we need to create a situation that doesn't put so much societal pressure on our students and our kids to have them consider literally taking their own lives, and that needs to change, and we can do that together. Thank you very much. And there is 1 minute for this question, so 1 minute, and the next person to answer is Melissa Baton-Caswell. Caswell?
Thank you. I want to make sure that all of our kids graduate from PAUSD ready to take on the opportunities that they're interested in, and that means they need to have the skills that are going to be important in the economy 13 years from now. And I also want to make sure that they want to be lifelong learners. So I want to make sure that they're engaged in their education, that we're looking at the whole child, not just one part, and we're looking at every single student, because you never know. That child sitting in the corner could be the next president of the United States, and we have to make sure that we're making every single student engaged in the classroom and every single student feel like they're supported, and they're supported in their academics, and they're supported in their social and emotional health.
All right. The next responder is Heidi Emberling. Is Emberling?
So I want every student to receive the highest quality education possible from preschool, our youngest students, through high school, and graduate with the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence to thrive in college and beyond. I want each year to be filled with joyful, purposeful learning, and I want them to be engaged in personalized, engaging learning experiences with teachers who inspire them, guide them, and create a positive connection to school.
All right, thank you very much. Next responder is Jennifer DiBrienza. Ms. DiBrienza.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. So this particular question is near and dear to my heart because I have a child who just started kindergarten in the district this year. So thinking about what I want for him at 13 years, sort of the tagline for my campaign from the beginning was that I was an educator who was an advocate for healthy, engaged learners. And I think that speaks to a lot of things that have already been mentioned, but specifically, 13 years from now, we're not even sure what the skills are going to be that are necessary to do whatever kids want to do in this world. So there are certain skills that we need to send all kids off with, but I think we also need to teach our kids to be learners and to be thinkers and to get really comfortable with the unknown and a changing landscape of what it is they may be engaged in and might have opportunities to do. So I want them to have a chance to dive into an unknown and to muck around with a group of students and not be afraid to take a risk and fail and mess it up and dive in and try again and iterate and reiterate. And I want them to go off confident and excited. Thank you.
And by process of elimination, that leads us to Todd Collins. Mr. Collins?
As so often it does. It's hard to add to all the good thoughts that have already been shared, so I'll repeat some of them. I think I'd love to see all those kindergartners educated to achieve their full potential, whether that's college or career or something else. And that means equipping them with the 21st century skills that I think we are really aiming to deliver in our school system. To make them be able to answer the questions, but also figure out what questions to ask and what questions they really care about. I also like to see them all be happy and kind and healthy, physically and mentally. Because I think without that, it's hard for any of us to feel great about our children's education. Finally, I think building on something that Jennifer said, I would love to see them resilient and to have experienced and overcome failure. Because I know from my own experience, that's been the best learning experiences that I've had.
Thank you to all 5 of our candidates. Once again, I'm County Supervisor Joe Simidian. For purposes of this evening's forum, it's probably more relevant that I am a 2-term former member of the Palo Alto School Board. So I'm delighted to see you all here, ready, willing, and able to serve. We do want to remind the audience that if you have questions, you may simply raise the question card, and Gabe in the blue suit will come by and pick them up. If you need a card and don't have one, simply raise your hand. He will bring a card by as well. And again, for those who are watching online, please feel free to send us a question by email. You can email us at debate@paweekly.com. And again, this is the Palo Alto Unified School District School Board's Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Palo Alto Weekly and Palo Alto Online. I'm going to turn it over now to our 2 journalists from the Palo Alto Weekly. We're going to start with editor Jocelyn Dong. Jocelyn, what's your question for these 5 candidates?
There's been a strong desire within the community that's surfaced to have greater innovation, particularly at the high school level. There was even a proposal to open a whole new high school focused on innovation that would then presumably spin off those innovations to the existing high schools. So my question for you is, how innovative do you think the school district is right now? And what would be one action that you would like to see taken to spur innovation, whether that's opening a new school, fostering new programs, or reinforcing old programs?
Question goes to innovation, and the first responder will be Jay Cabrera. Congratulations.
2 for 2.
Let's call that 1 minute.
1 minute. All right. Well, my vision is to transform our high schools into cultural epicenters of innovation. And so in that context, there's a couple things that go into that. One is, empowering our students and empowering our youth. So literally lowering the voting age to 15 and getting youth directly engaged and empowered in our society early, so they get at least 3 years of civic engagement at an early age, which can literally transform the way that they interact with the rest of their lives in the world. From there, I'm working on a fantasy program of life. In the context of doing surveys with students, they say over and over again that life skills are the things that they're missing. They know how to take tests, they know how to regurgitate information, but what about life skills? So in that context, part of that can be being an innovator. Some people may want to create a fantasy organization or a mock business that they could experience as a young student, and they could build that and learn from that. And yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. And Todd Collins.
Thanks, Joe. There is a lot of discussion about innovation, and I think it was a great outcome of the Enrollment Management Task Force that I was a member of last year that really shone a light on the desire for innovation and serviced this idea for a new high school, a new innovative high school. I oppose the new high school due to our inclining enrollment, but I think that shouldn't detract from the fact that we should try to encourage more innovation in our district, because there's clearly both a desire among teachers and students to have it, and a desire among families to have more choices. But to bring that around, to accomplish that, we really have to bring it around to our budget. If we don't get our spending under control, we will not have the money to develop new programs. Ms. DeBrienza said at a board meeting a few months ago that dollars alone can't be the reason that we don't pursue innovation. I wish that could be true, but I actually don't think it is. I think without funding, we do not get the innovation that we want. So at another point, a board member talked about spending millions of dollars on innovation, and heard Dr. McGee to think bigger. I think, unfortunately, we've spent those millions, and we do not have enough innovation in the pipeline.
So a clarifying question there, Todd. So We believe that at this point, there is no budget for additional innovation programs.
Unfortunately, I don't think there is.
All right. Melissa Bates-Caswell, same question. Innovation.
Yeah, we have made so many changes to our high school since I've been on the board. We've added flipped classrooms, we've added blended learning, we've added pathways for particular things like social justice and sports careers and engineering. We put in a program where over 200 students this year are spending the entire year doing research projects with mentors that we found for them. And we have classes that you can pick, things like comedy literature and astrophysics that they don't have in other districts. I do think that one action we could take to spur innovation is to help our teachers that have innovative ideas take those ideas out and flush them out. And the way we can do that is give them some time in order to do that. That is how we ended up with flipped classrooms and blended learning and some of these innovative pathways. But if we don't give the teachers the time to focus on their innovative ideas, they're not going to be able to do them. This community values choice, and what I would do is I would help our teachers invest in choice for our kids.
Jennifer DiBrienza, same question. Innovation.
Thank you. I think it's vital that we continue to innovate. I think that we live in a changing world. We live in a world where we're learning more about best practices in education. We are in Silicon Valley. It seems crazy that we are not continuing to pursue innovative practices. Todd is right that I did say exactly that, and I think that I stick to that. Budgets are moral documents, and budgets show what our priorities are. So if this is something that is important to us from an educative standpoint, and because I think us continuing to innovate will continue to pull more students in who we aren't currently serving well, I think it is an imperative that we continue to innovate. And our budget should reflect that. So if that means that we need to pick and choose, that's what that means. But I don't think that we cannot continue to innovate in the name of a budget. We hired Max because we said that he was going to be innovative, and I think the board has in some ways supported that and in some ways gotten in the way of some of that innovation. And I would support giving the teachers room to come up with some good ideas.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear, the beep, beep, beep was not because you went over your time.
Heidi Emberling, you are the last to answer this question.
Sure. So our schools pursue innovation in a variety of different ways every day, and I've seen it over the past 4 years. Ms. Baten-Caswell mentioned the Pathways programs, our Advanced Authentic Research program. We have a new child development program that's near and dear to my heart as an early childhood specialist. That pairs high school students with our youngest preschoolers. So they're in the classroom with preschoolers twice a week and then at their high school once a week. So we're also innovating when it comes to creating inclusion classrooms and looking at universal design for learning. So these are different ways of approaching learning for all learners in the classroom so that everyone can access the great learning going on. We've moved to block scheduling at Gunn, which is larger blocks where students can do 1/3 lecture, 1/3 hands-on project-based learning, 1/3 individual work, all within the same class structure. So it's different ways of approaching teaching and learning in the classroom, keeping it high quality.
Thank you very much. That takes us to Elena Kadvani. Elena, educational reporter for the Palo Alto Weekly.
During the last school year, the district's elementary enrollment management committee, or the elementary subcommittee, one of the members of which is sitting up here with us, Todd Collins, was divided on whether or not the district needed to open a new elementary school, and the group issued a minority report around this. Do you favor opening a new elementary school? And this is actually coming to the current board at its next meeting in the form of a feasibility report on opening a new combination elementary and or middle school.
All right, let's give that 1 minute. Jay Cabrera, you start.
Man, I wish these were votes too, right? I think this goes really good along with the idea of innovation and the concept of what I had brought up in previous school board elections, and that is, this integration between elementary school, middle school, and even, higher education, adult education. I think that integration of multiple different ages and types of education in the same space is very, very healthy and brings a new dynamic. And if this is the way to do that, by opening an elementary school and merging it with, for example, in the Cub Release Place, where you can connect it with other middle school activities, I would love that. I'm sure we can make it happen within the budget. Of course, if the community had reservations about that, I'm willing to discuss. Yes.
Todd Collins.
Thank you. Yeah, as Alina referred, I was actually on the Enrollment Management Committee and involved with the elementary analysis. And the answer is no, I would not advocate opening a 13th elementary school. As I think some people are aware, Palo Alto's enrollment is shrinking. Our kindergarten classes have been shrinking this is the 6th consecutive year that our kindergarten enrollment has declined. This year alone, K through 5 enrollment declined by 295 students, which is approximately the size of a small elementary school. So it is larger than the size of Barron Park Elementary School, for instance. So the cycle has turned. We went through a long period where we shrank, and then we've gone through 30 years where we've grown, and now we're in the 6th year of shrinking. So due to that, I would say we should not open an elementary school.
All right, Heidi Emberling.
So when I first joined the board, we were looking at increasing enrollment across the district. 4 years later, we are seeing this remarkable new trend. While our high schools are absorbing the largest classes in their history, we're seeing 5 to 6 years of subsequent declining enrollment in our elementary schools. So we've put in $1.8 million into class size reduction at our high school levels. And then we have to figure out what the plan is going to be for the shrinking enrollment. But I do want to respond to something Mr. Collins said, and that is if you look at the 10-year trend, which we just did on last Tuesday, you see that actually our enrollment has grown overall in our elementary schools about 359 students, or the size of an elementary school. It's also grown by 659 middle school students, which is the size of another middle school. So if we're looking forward into expanding our schools, I would say potentially a K-8 model might be an innovative thing to explore.
Thank you very much. That brings us to Jennifer D. Brienne.
Thank you. As the others have stated, enrollment at the elementary level is down and has been going down. But I do think that when the Enrollment Management Committee looked at the data, they looked at how many classrooms we had and how many students we had. And I think that there was talk on the committee about, okay, so there's actually enough room in classrooms for bodies, but is there enough play space? Is there an ideal size for an elementary school? These are things that maybe you can't just run through a computer, run the numbers, but that matter for the quality of our kids' experiences. There also is the issue of where enrollment is growing and shrinking in different parts of the city, in different quadrants. It's up, and in other quadrants it's down. And as Ms. Emberling just said, enrollment is up at the middle school. And so it's something that clearly would have to be explored deeply, but I think the possibility of a K-8 school is something worth looking at.
You know, it would be fun to open another school, but the truth of it is with declining enrollment for the last 5 or 6 years and the going forward projection that we're going to have declining enrollment for at least another 6 years based on birth rates, so it's not even about whether it's too expensive to live in Palo Alto. It's expensive to have a school. You have to have the overhead, you have to have the principals, you have to have the custodians, you have to have the librarian. And we have 26 classrooms that are not being used as classrooms as primary classrooms in elementary. They are being used as music rooms. They are being used as maker studios. They are being used as art classrooms. I think that's fantastic. But I can't justify opening another elementary school. By the way, the middle schools are bigger because a bubble of students is moving through. And then they'll move through the high school, and then we're going to see declines both at high school and at middle school. So I am not in support right now of opening another elementary school. In terms of play space, we've built up, and that's allowed us to keep this play space we have.
All right, thank you very much. Now it's my turn once again, and I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and ask a two-part question. Palo Alto, you can handle 2 parts. Come on now. First part's going to be lightning round. We're going to start at this end, and we're going to go all the way down. So, Jacob Brewer, you do not get to be first this time, just to be clear. 15 seconds or less. Class size. Does class size reduction really improve learning for the typical youngster in the classroom? A lot? A little? Or not at all? Does class size reduction really improve learning in the classroom for the typical youngster in that class? A lot? A little? Or not at all? Heidi Emberling?
Oh, Joe.
Starting at this end and
15
we narrow it down.
seconds. It depends on the class that you're talking about. It's very difficult to have small class size if you're talking about band or orchestra. If you're talking about a core class that, let's say, needs a section to discuss a book in depth, then you need to have smaller class size.
Dr. Collins?
Academically, if the teacher changes the way she teaches or he teaches to respond to a smaller class size, yes. But more importantly, a smaller class size will have more connection between the teacher and the students.
Class size is really important at the elementary level. For certain classes, core classes at the secondary level, I think it's important. But the most important thing is the quality of the teacher. And that is the most, that preempts everything.
Jennifer D. Branza.
It does depend on a lot of variables, what age you're talking about and what class you're talking about, but there's a lot of research on this, and academically, it helps marginally, but when it comes to relationship building, which is really important, that smaller class sizes do make a big difference, and it allows for teachers to make a stronger connection with their students.
Jacob Brewer.
Yes, I would say that class size matters a lot, and that the goal would be keeping under 20 students, to really have good engagement. A lot of times that's not possible, but in the high school level, I would love to see more university type classes, like large lectures that break out into smaller groups. I think we could do that.
Thank you. Couldn't get most of you into any of those boxes, could I? All right. So, let's give you a little more opportunity to expand. There has been quite a bit of discussion over the course of this past year about class size at the district's high schools and middle schools and the district's official class size ratios, which are the staffing targets in the teachers' contracts. Are you satisfied with the district's efforts to reduce class sizes at the secondary school level? And is more investment needed at the high school level? Why or why not? And does the district need a more specific class size policy? What might that look like if the answer is yes? So, we're going to go right down the row again. 1 minute. Heidi Emberling.
Okay. So, of course, there are trade-offs when you talk about class size reduction, right? For a certain amount of money, you can reduce all class sizes maybe by one student. Is this a good investment? It's one student. Well, you know what? Class sizes grew by one student at a time, too. So they can go back down one student at a time as well. And I think when we have money to invest in it, class size reduction is a great way to do that, particularly in the younger grades, but also in the high schools. We had a student board member last year talk about class sizes with us as we were having this conversation, and she said, well, I've had really big classes with excellent teachers, and it hasn't seemed like it's a really big class, and I've had really small classes with not so great teachers, and it has seemed like not a great experience. So I think it really depends on the teacher, how the teacher connects with students, how they use the time in the classroom. That's why I like the longer block scheduling at the high schools, because you can provide more opportunities for those personal connections.
And before we go down the row, I'm going to press just a little bit more. Do we need more investment at the high school? Why or why not? Heidi Emberling, can you push back on that a little? Yes or no?
Sure. Yes.
That was a yes.
How's that?
Good answer.
Thank you. Now we're on to Todd Collins.
We've made some progress in class sizes in the last year, which is great to see, particularly reducing the largest classes in the middle and the high schools. We still have some oversized classes, and more concerned we're at risk for more at the future because of our budget deficit. Class sizes are important for a couple of reasons. As I said, academic achievement, I think at least somewhat, and even more the connection between the student and the teacher. I was very surprised to learn that we don't have a board policy or district policy or even public guidelines on what our class sizes should be outside of K through 2. The oft-quoted 28.5 students per teacher as Joe said, is actually not even related to class size. It's a staffing ratio. It's a budget tool for assigning budget dollars to schools to hire teachers. So it seems clear to me that we need a class size policy that the community understands and is comfortable with.
And again, that is not because you've used up all of your time. All good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's go down.
I'll stop there.
Elizabeth Caswell.
You know what? I think that it would be a good idea for us to have some policies on ranges for class size in middle and high school, particularly in the core classes. Right now, when we talk about averages, it's across the whole school and across whole departments, and we need to take it down to what the courses are so that you can know what to expect when you're in an English class versus a math class. On the other hand, I think putting hard caps on classes in high school would be a very hard thing, because you do that. My son spent 3 years waiting to take AP psychology, and if he had been that last kid, that 30th kid or that 32nd kid, and hadn't gotten that class, that would be incredibly disappointing, and I don't really think that that would have changed, for him to be that extra kid, would have changed his opportunity in that class. So we need to be very careful. It's also a cost trade-off. Taking class size down one kid in secondary school for us, or in high school, is $750,000. So we would have to figure out what we would trade it for.
Thank you. Jennifer DeGranza.
Thank you. I think the district has made a lot of progress in dealing with the class size issue over the past year, and I thank our community members who really pushed on bringing it to the forefront. I think that, so I'm a math educator by trade, and I think this is a perfect example of where averages are not a useful way to talk about this so much. Ranges might be better, or other metrics. So I do think that there is a difference between a middle school or a core class and a high school elective. If you've got a senior class where kids are excited to be there and interested in the topic, then no, putting a cap on it might not make sense. But I do think that thinking about caps for middle school classes and core classes would not be a bad idea, at least a narrower range than we now have. I think it
Oh, you're over time.
that is not my time. But that, we can pause there.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're working the mean streets of Palo Alto. Slide the doors closed.
Okay. What? Do we know if there's actually an emergency happening? Is there? I know we wanted quiet, but do we know if there's actually an emergency happening? Yeah, well, I guess that's someone else's job. Right?
Back of the room to keep the door closed for the next minute or two. That means no matter how eager someone is to join the forum,
And open the door.
they're going to ask them to stay. And if you pull this door shut as well,
Yep, there we go. Okay, I'm done.
You have 50 more seconds.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Jacob Rara?
Okay. Yeah, so, this connects to a budgetary question, and I'm a huge advocate of supporting our communities, increase funding for education. I feel that education is our top priority in our society. In the context of that, I do agree in the context of having no hard caps. I like that because we need flexibility, but I feel like it's not an administrative issue, right? This particular issue of class size should be empowered to the teachers and the parents to really decide that. And if they want to increase their taxes to lower the class size, there should be a way to ensure that that can happen, and that administrative involvement is really not as necessary. And our goal should be to get down to less than 20 students if we can. And we can coordinate the budgets. I just want to mention that we are one of the highest funded school districts in the area. So when we talk about this issue related to other school districts, it's important to acknowledge that other places have even harder time than we do. But we do need to increase. I think that spending the money instead of just having like 10% reserves, this would be the kind of thing that we spend our money on and reduce our reserves.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to go back now to our panel of journalists from the Palo Alto Weekly. Before we do, I want to mention again, we are here to hear about the candidacies of 5 candidates for 3 seats that are open on the Palo Alto School Board in this November election. There are 3 seats up, 5 candidates. The challenge for each one of us then is to pick the best 3 to fill those 3 seats. Let me go back to Jocelyn Dong, editor of the Palo Alto Weekly. She'll be followed by Elena Kazani, who is the education reporter for the Palo Alto Weekly. Jocelyn, next question is?
Thanks. This is about academic stress. Often in governance, it's advisable to go back at decisions that have been made to review how well the outcomes have been for that. Last year, there were 2 decisions made regarding homework and test stacking. One was that teachers should use Schoology, the scheduling software, and the other one was that they should be adhering to the homework policy. So I'd like to know, how well do you think the teachers are actually adhering to this policy? And then also, what kind of difference has it made in the classrooms?
All right, and again, we're back to our random drawing, and it is Todd Collins to start.
Thank you.
1 minute, please.
Thank you. I'm very interested in the homework policy because I think it's a great example of something that we don't do well. We spent a long time creating a homework policy that I thought was thoughtful and nuanced and potentially productive, and then spent almost no time figuring out how to implement it and then audit and then ensure that it was actually being followed. And as a parent of high schoolers at the time, I was certainly very well aware that my kids' teachers weren't following it. And as I go across the district and talk to parents every day, I hear things like, we even have a homework policy, or why does my kid have a lot of homework and the kid in the other class doesn't have any homework? And I think we have, frankly, not done a great job at monitoring the effectiveness of the homework policy, so I can't answer your question about whether it's working, because I don't think it's really been tried yet.
Elizabeth Caswell.
Yeah, first of all, I think that adding a requirement that was negotiated with our unions that they needed to use Schoology to post homework and tests and projects, I think actually that's been incredibly effective. I watched my child go through middle school and high school, and I've watched the change in how he manages his homework as a result of that. The homework policy is really tough because some kids take an hour to do homework that other kids can do in 10 minutes. And I think we have some thinking to do about what really should the policy be. I know we thought a lot about the policy, but it has a hard cap on number of minutes and number of hours. And I just don't think that fits an environment where kids finish things in different amounts of time. On consistency, we did hire a group to come in and look at consistency in grading practices, homework, and tests across our high schools. And we looked department by department, and we found some really good information for us to use to improve the situation. Yeah.
Has any action been taken as a result of that report? I mean, it was a in-depth, long report.
Yeah.
I read it as well. Has any action been taken as a result?
There's been on-the-ground action, so there has been work within departments to create more consistency, to use more standard grading practices, and to have more standards on tests and what a syllabus looks like. It has not been brought back to the board with what the results are, but I have already seen it. I have a high school student, so I've already seen it in certain, particularly in math and in science. I've seen a lot of change in how more consistent things are.
And I'm going to do a follow-up for the follow-up, if I may. For the 2
Sure.
incumbents on the board. First, Ms. Caswell, and then when we get to Ms. Emberling. Implicit, I think, in Mr. Collins' comments was the suggestion that we really couldn't evaluate the effectiveness of Schoology, which is the preferred pronunciation, or the homework limits, because we hadn't really monitored it. Did I get that right, Mr. Collins?
Certainly the homework policy, yes.
All right, so let's stay with the homework policy, which I can pronounce. So, the homework policy. The implicit criticism was, can't really evaluate it if you can't really look to any effort to monitor it. Is that a fair criticism?
I think that's a fair criticism, but I also think it's very hard the way we put the homework policy in place. It's very hard for teachers to use it the way we've put it in place. And I think the biggest issue is that getting feedback to the actually, that's not entirely true, because we've put in anonymous surveys that students are filling out at the end, high school students are filling out at the end of every semester now. And homework and tests are one of the questions on there, and there is free response area. And that information is now going not just to the teacher, but it's going up to their supervisor and up to the principal, and that's being looked at across departments. So we could do this better for sure, but there is some feedback mechanism happening that wasn't happening before.
All right. Jacob Herrera?
Yeah, so I mean, what I've heard so far is that, you know, being looked at as an administrative issue. Again, I feel like I agree that you need more than a year analysis, right? And two, that I wouldn't be comfortable making a final decision until actually talking to students, you know, going and directly talking to students, going and directly talking to teachers. Is the new Schoology program, which I think is great, you know, I remember it from before, you need to have something that can track all the homework being given so that it's not overloading students. You know, is it reducing the load on teachers, or is it increasing their workload and taking away time from students? I mean, that is a really important question to ask. From there, I feel like from my experience of going to Gunn High School, for example, 1984, 1998, you know, my interaction with students has been that the homework has been increasing. And more concerning is the homework increasing over the last 10 years or 20 years is that for younger students, it's increasing. You know, that even in middle school, even elementary school, that we have this ridiculous amount of homework that's going on, and we need to reduce in general the amount of homework and allow free time for children to be with their families and their parents.
All right. That takes us to Heidi Emberlin. Ms. Emberlin?
All right. So one of the great outcomes of having all these conversations about homework is that it has increased awareness about what is going on in our district. Families are starting to have more conversations with their students. Students are starting to have more conversations with their teachers. These student surveys that Ms. Bacon-Caswell referred to, these are surveys students take right at the end of the course, and these go right back to the teacher. So there's questions about, did the homework seem manageable? How much were you able to handle, and that sort of thing. What we've also introduced is a new form that parents have to fill out before the beginning of every year. It's an hours form where you have to put in all the hours written in the course catalog for each class the child is signing up for, all the hours they have for extracurricular activities, all the hours, and sleep is pre-filled, by the way, with the number of sleep hours needed. And then it can't go over a certain number, so families have this opportunity to at least have a conversation, raise awareness about how many hours there are in a week that can be spent on after school or in-school activities.
And the critique about the ability to monitor and evaluate, your take on that is?
So with Schoology, I have seen a huge increase in use of Schoology, and we get reports from the principals at the end of each year about what percentage of their teachers are consistently using Schoology. I think the use of Schoology, can I take 10 seconds? Okay, is critical, particularly for students that have any sort of special need or accommodation in the classroom, because a special ed aide or specialist will work with a student and not be able to find out what their homework is in every class if it's not in one consistent place. They have to pull from each teacher, and if the child didn't take the right note, or because they're not with them all day. And so if there's anybody helping our students out, they need to be able to go to one place to help their students. This is the same for parents who want to help their students figure out, how much they can do.
Thank you. So I agree with Ms. Emberling that just talking about it helps us improve it. It helps families discuss, it helps the board discusses, the teachers discuss. It just comes to the forefront and it becomes a priority for us. So I think that's something important. The adoption of Schoology and getting it into the contract, I think, was enormous. It showed that this was a big priority for us for the reasons that our current board members have talked about, and that when you get into the contract, it's something that we require our teachers to do, and makes it a clear priority. So I think that using Schoology has been great for kids in that it has made it very clear how much homework they had and when it was due, and has it all in one place. It does give more work to the teachers, and I think that that's something that since I was a classroom teacher originally, and since I left the classroom for 15 years, I've worked in schools and districts, and one of the toughest reasons for getting in the way for change is getting buy-in and building consensus. So if teachers aren't doing what you want them to do, I think we have to have other conversations as to why, and often there are reasons why. And if we can get to that, I think we can make the progress.
Todd, you want to jump in, and then we're going to go to Melissa.
Yeah, please. You had your hand up first, I saw.
That's up to mine.
Okay. I did want to point out for people who are unfamiliar with our homework policy that it covers the total number of hours a week a student is supposed to have from all their courses. And so a program that gives feedback to individual teachers on their own homework doesn't really go to the gist of the policy because it doesn't, the question is, what is the total homework load across all that person's courses? And as far as I know, we don't have any mechanism for even monitoring that.
Melissa Bates Caswell?
If each teacher actually put the hours of homework into their Schoology lesson plans, we would have a way to do that because there's a way to roll it up by kid, but that doesn't happen. But what I wanted to just clarify is we actually don't have more homework at the elementary level. We have taken a very hard look at what's being done for homework at the elementary level, and there's been a major rollback in homework. That doesn't mean there's been a major rollback in academics in the classroom, but it does mean that there's been a major rollback in homework, and we've questioned the purpose. And our principals are really involved in this. They're looking at the purpose of the homework and making sure that we're not just assigning homework for homework's sake, which, by the way, when my child was in elementary school, it was seen as important to bring the homework home and bring it back again. That was seen as important as doing the homework.
All right. Thank you all. So I believe we are now ready to go to Elena Kadmani for the next question. That was a wide-ranging discussion. Elena?
Mental health is an ever-present issue for this community, and the difficulty of accessing high-quality, timely, affordable mental health services in the external community is well documented. There's a long waiting list to see therapists, challenges getting insurance coverage. There's a general local and statewide shortage of child and adolescent psychiatrists. And at the same time, the district's counseling partner, which provides services on the campuses, has instituted a process of putting limits on the number of sessions that students have so they can reach more students, and the idea of passing students off who need long-term help to the community. So this begs the question, if there's an established need, how far should the school district go to extend these services to students and meet their needs on campus? And has the district achieved that level or not?
All right, we're going to start with Todd Collins.
Wow, that's a great question. It really is. I personally have experienced some of the frustrations that you articulated about the limitation of mental health services, since one of my own children had serious mental health issues when she was in high school, and we failed to get her the kind of mental health services that she needed for some of the reasons that you alluded to. The name I think we should all focus on here is Dr. Steve Adelsheim, who is bringing to Palo Alto and our county, as Joe knows, a new model of mental health services for young people, both in the community and potentially in the schools. He's bringing what's called the Headspace model, which is a walk-in clinic for young people to get mental health services. I believe the first one will open in some north part of the county sometime in the next year. And his goal, or one of his articulated goals, is to offer similar services through the schools as he did previously when he was in New Mexico. I think that's a fantastic option for the schools to explore.
Melissa Bates Caswell.
Yeah, this is a huge issue in our community, and actually this is a huge issue nationwide. The reimbursement rates are so low for adolescent mental health that it can be very hard to get those services. At the same time, our mission is education of our students, and we're never going to be excellent mental health providers. We use adolescents counseling services, and we ask them to go to a model that would serve more students, and their belief was that it made sense to bring students after a number of sessions to send them out to more experienced providers. Because once you're seeing a student that often, they probably have more serious mental health issues. So I look for new models in our community. I'm looking to Stanford, and I'm looking to some of the other experts in this area to provide some other models, because obviously the model we have right now for our community is not optimal. I would like to be investing in vitamins, not painkillers. Well, I don't want to stop investing in this, but I'd like to invest more in vitamins so that we have less kids that need mental health services.
Heidi Emberley.
All right. Obviously, mental health services goes beyond the school walls to the larger community, and we need to develop partnerships with the community, and we have through Project Safety Net and through Dr. Adelschein's work. Also, Joe, through your great work in getting some adolescent beds developed at El Camino Hospital, which is the first time in our county that we've had beds for adolescents reserved at a hospital. So thank you for your work there. This is a huge issue, and I think we have done a lot of work around this. We have created 2 wellness centers, one at each high school. We've added mental health therapists at each high school. We've added what we call WOWs this year, the wellness outreach workers who are doing programming with students around wellness, around health. We have mindfulness training. We have yoga classes. We have students taking charge of this conversation and writing about it in all of the great journalism outlets that exist at both of our high school campuses. We ran out of time.
All right.
I could talk on and on.
Jay Cabrera.
I mean, this is really the issue of our time in our society right now. And the problem with it is that we don't have the solution. And I feel like everything we're talking about right now is focused on the reaction to the problem, right? For every one student who literally, steps in front of a train, right, there are 100 students who may think that they might want to take their life, right? And the process of thinking that you want to consider that is already the problem, right? We need to be preemptively active in changing our societal issues. I feel like the most important thing is to recognize that as a school board, and as individual school board members and our communities, we don't have the solution to this, and we need to fund a highly interactive and community discussion and board to really study this, because the real issues are the societal pressures and the parents and the students and the teachers pushing kids too far and too much, and it's really, really scary.
Jennifer DiBrienza.
Thank you. As many people have said, this is a large problem, and the district has taken a lot of action to help with this issue. But as the question originally stated, a lot of times there's just a shortage in the community itself. And as Ms. Peyton-Caswell said, the school system is not necessarily equipped to solve all of these problems, but we are focused on some prevention, on supporting students in a variety of ways with stress. We're not going to stop all of those problems. There are mental health issues in our community, and that includes our teens and our children. So I do like that there are initiatives. There's work out there being done with Project Safety Net, and as Mr. Collins mentioned, the Headspace Clinic, that I hear a lot of people in the community excited that these are around. I think that the biggest thing we can do is develop strong networks so that when we do see a child in distress, there are places we can send them and supports we can connect them to.
Quick follow-up, Elizabeth Caswell, and then to Heidi Emberlin.
To me, this is a regional issue. It's a state issue, it's a national issue, and we need to work together with our colleagues in the city and our colleagues in other districts and create solutions that are regional and statewide. And we can do that as school board members. That is part of our work. And we have done this on other issues, and we've already started doing this on this particular issue, because I think adolescent mental health support goes way beyond what our expertise is in a school district.
We reached out last year to the CDC and invited them to come in and partner with our County Department of Public Health to look at risk factors, protective factors, and best practices around suicide prevention and youth health and well-being. We've gotten initial draft results back, and we will get the final report soon. We are putting those practices immediately into our schools as soon as we can, talking about them and trying to align ourselves with what the CDC will recommend. So we're already reaching out and doing a lot of that work.
Anybody else on this topic? Because I want to let you know we are in fact being watched online, and I know that because we have half a dozen emails from folks, including one that says,
Joe's questions are not audible. And another who says, can we get louder sound? It keeps disappearing and we cannot hear. So I want to pass that along to our crew, and we'll do the best we can. Before we get to the student journalists in just a minute, we're going to do another lightning round. And it's going to be 15 seconds. And just to be clear, 15 seconds means 15 seconds. One word means one word. They're all going to be related to these issues of choice and innovation that you have raised. I've pulled them out, pulled your names out of the basket. Heidi Emberling, Jennifer DiBrienza, Elizabeth Caswell, Jay Cabrera, and Todd Collins. We're going to go in that order. First question. Do you support vouchers? Why or why not? One sentence. Heidi?
You mean private vouchers?
Vouchers that people can use to go to private or parochial schools of their choice.
No, I don't support them because I'm a public school advocate.
Jennifer?
No, I do not support them. We have a commitment to educate all children, and if there's a problem in the current system, we need to focus all of our energy on the current system.
Melissa Baton-Caswell?
No, I don't support them. I believe that we have an excellent school district, and we should be investing in serving all of the students in our community in this school district.
Jay Cabrera?
I support public schools 100%, but it's very important to note that right next door, less than a mile away in Redwood City and in East Palo Alto, the data shows that when low-income people send their kids to charter schools, they get better education because it's so underfunded.
Todd Collins?
No, I do not support vouchers, particularly in a district like PAUSD that provides such excellent public
All right.
schooling.
So, having said that, charters were referenced. Let's go to charters. Would charter schools be a good thing for Palo Alto Unified School District? Heidi Emberling. Yes or no? Why or why not?
I don't support charters in PAUSD for a variety of the reasons that have been mentioned. We have excellent public schools here. We have a mandate to serve all students. We don't turn anyone away at the door. We have to provide services for kids with special needs. And
that's 15 seconds. And then some, Jennifer DiBrienza.
thank you.
I do not support charter schools. I don't know if the question is in this district or in general.
In this district.
In this district, no. I think that our funds are best served in trying to meet all the needs of all the students in the district.
Melissa Baton-Caswell?
I do not support charter schools in this district. I think we have the wherewithal to serve all the students that need to be served in this district, and we should spend our money that way.
Thank you very much. Jay Cabrera?
I'm not a big fan of charter schools, but more importantly, I support empowering parents to have the choice.
Todd Collins?
I don't support charter schools, and I do support greater choice and innovation within our own district.
Funny you should say that, because the last question in the lightning round is, if you don't support vouchers, and most of you don't, and you don't support charter schools here in Palo Alto, and most of you don't, but you have all previously said you support choice and innovation, what is it you do support that would provide choice and innovation for Palo Alto families and their students? Heidi Emberling? 15 seconds.
All right, you don't have to look any further than PAUSD. We have choice programs right here. We have Spanish immersion, we have Mandarin immersion, we have an Ohlone model, project-based learning, we have connections at the middle school level, we have everything here.
Jennifer DiBrienza.
What was the question?
15
seconds.
Innovation, Palo Alto families and their
I think we do have a lot of choice here, but I think that there is not necessarily equitable access to it, and I think we need to. We've always valued parent input and teacher input, and I think we need to continue to listen to how teachers want to innovate and what kinds of innovations parents want to see, and really push to provide those.
Thank you. Melissa Baton-Caswell?
Our community values choice, and we have supported our community with lots of choices at every educational level, at program level, at the class level, not just in the classes, but also in enrichment programs, and I believe we should continue to do that. I do believe that we need to make sure that we have full access for everybody.
Jay Cabrera?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that we have some of the best schools in all of California. I mean, this is an amazing school district. We are very well funded, and we shouldn't let that get to our heads because it's still not enough, because we are not in California. We are in the world. The entire globe is now a competition with the internet and everything like that, so we need to be comparing ourselves to schools in Europe and schools all over Asia, and we should, time, okay.
And Todd Collins.
I think we offer a lot of choice at the elementary level, and we could offer more choice at the secondary level. Particularly, I'd like to see more project-based learning alternatives at the secondary level.
All right, thank you very much. This would be a good time to just take a deep breath, say thank you to our two journalists from the Palo Alto Weekly, Jocelyn Dong and Elena Kadvani. And you may have noticed that they are not the two who are now sitting at the table. We have replaced them with two of our student journalists from the Pali Campanile. We have co-editor-in-chief Kai Oda, and from the Gun Oracle, we have co-managing editor Matthew Hamilton. And they're each going to ask a pair of questions. And I will shout out the time limits, gentlemen, after I hear what the question is and make a judgment about how much time we should use. Are we ready to begin?
Yes.
All right. And who's going to begin?
I'll ask the first question.
All right. Matthew Hamilton from the Gun Oracle. The first question is?
All right. Some high school students feel that because of inequities between teaching styles, curricula, and tests, a student's grade for the exact same course depends too much on the teacher they are assigned. Last year, the district implemented a teacher feedback survey in which students were asked to answer 10 standardized questions for each class. The survey is currently in the second year of its pilot program. Do you favor making these evaluations permanent? Would you support making the aggregated results for each teacher public? And how would you use the data to remedy teaching inequities within each course?
Could you repeat those questions? There was a lot
Okay.
back into that.
So the first one is, do you favor extending the pilot program of the survey? The second is, would you make the data public? And then the third would be, would you use the data to remedy teaching inequities within a course?
Todd Collins, you're first up.
Great. I think having the teacher feedback survey is a great innovation, long overdue. It was funny, like many people in college, we had those surveys when I was in college back in the Stone Age. And so I was surprised that it's a new innovation here in PAUSD. I do think, so I certainly would favor continuing those evaluations and even evolving them to cover more than they do today. In terms of making the results public, I'm not sure. I think I can see pluses and minuses to that. There may be ways to make public disguised data or aggregated data in a way that was constructive and didn't become a guide for how to choose teachers. Finally, in terms of remedying inequities, I think that data is vital. I wouldn't think to remedy inequities, but to give feedback to teachers so they can improve the quality of the teaching that they give.
Thank you very much. Our next responder with 1 minute is Melissa Baden Caswell.
Yes, so I am in favor of extending this trial period. We hired Dr. McGee after hearing about this, that he had done this at another place. We have done surveys before, but they went directly to the teacher, so that sort of gave this stilted feedback. Because this is anonymous and it goes to the teacher, it goes to the teacher supervisor, and it goes to the principal, it's much more powerful. You can look across whole departments. I believe that aggregated data could be looked at publicly, but as Mr. Collins said, I think there are some significant downsides to reporting teacher by teacher. And I think that using this data to improve teaching and improve consistency is exactly what we're already doing now, and I support continuing that.
Thank you very much. Heidi Emberling.
Sure. Yes, I absolutely would support continuing this pilot. I think there's a student component to continuing the pilot because students have to remember to be constructive in their criticism of the teachers. There were some offhanded personal negative comments about teachers that would then turn the teachers against wanting to continue it, right? So there has to be some responsibility too there. I think making the data public, we'd have to disaggregate it in some way. That's why we brought in Hanover Research to look at course alignment, because we've heard this for years. Okay, why should you take 2 different English classes and have totally different experiences? So looking at the common syllabi and the evidence-based grading are ways that we're trying to change that, and to use the data for teacher improvement, of course. That's the point of doing it, so absolutely.
All right. Jay Cabrera.
Great, yeah, yes, I would definitely support, continuing programs, very important data. I'm all about making things as public as possible. Obviously going to need to be reviewed for specific, words. I feel like this connects to an issue, a slightly broader issue of the ability to empower parents and students to be able to remove really bad teachers, and the need to make sure that you're not just getting rid of young teachers just because they were the most recently hired, that you really want the best teachers for the parents and the students. So I love diversity. I love empowering teachers to have slightly diverse classes, so they're not all exactly the same. But if there is a bad teacher, there needs to be a way to deal with it.
And Jennifer D. Grandson.
I think as people here with me, I agree with extending the feedback surveys. I think that they are vital. They give us lots of information, both to the teacher and up the chain, as you all said. About making it public, I think I agree with others that it's useful information to have as a group, but specific teachers, I don't know how that helps students. To know teacher by teacher. I think that using the data I'm an educator by trade, and I see a great opportunity there in using it in professional learning communities. So teachers get together with this data and they look at what their feedback was and what other feedback was, and I'm noticing this that I don't see in my feedback. What is it that you are doing? Or hey, here's what I'm doing. Or really just when teachers share information, teaching gets better and kids' experiences get better. So I think using that data in professional learning communities can be really helpful.
Matthew, could you read the third and final question one more time for a brief follow-up here, please?
How would you use the data to remedy teaching inequities within a course? Was the third and final question.
And the second one?
The second one would be, would you support making the aggregated results for each teacher public?
And the first one?
Do you favor making these evaluations permanent? Because right now it's in a pilot program.
So many of the responses spoke to the potential to use the information to improve instruction. And the question that I'd like to add on with is, would you support allowing the information to be used as part of the evaluation process? This is one of the benefits of being the moderator. You get to ask questions like that. Would you support allowing the information to be used as part of the formal evaluation process? Todd Collins?
I'm not familiar with the formal evaluation process for our teachers, so I can't give a really specific answer to that. I would say that it's useful just as an instructional supervisor or an assistant principal sits in the classroom and observes the teacher as part of their review process, that they have access to the written feedback from the students as well.
Melissa Baton-Caswell?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it could be helpful as a part, but I think that there's some danger in using the open-ended student comments as evaluation tools unless we have some sort of control with that. And I don't mean control in good versus bad, but I mean that students couldn't just give non-constructive feedback. I do think, though, that if someone's evaluating a teacher, if they can't see how this teacher fares in this kind of feedback and can't see how it looks across the department, then it's too bad that we're doing it then. I think it's great material for a supervisor to be able to see if I have a teacher who's inconsistent, and then try to help that teacher improve their teaching by using that information.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful about using it in the formal evaluation. It's certainly one piece of the larger evaluation and evaluative tool. I think teachers want feedback. One of the high school teachers I talked to said, I got 50% of my evaluations said that the homework went on for way too many hours per week. I just didn't even know that because no student had ever actually approached me and told me that in person. They wrote it in the evaluation. And so now I'm reevaluating if I'm giving too much homework. So I think they can be very useful for teachers who enjoy the process of self-reflection and want to improve practice.
Jacob Herrera?
Yes, I feel that we should be utilizing every data for the evaluation of our schools and our teachers. In addition to that, obviously, there'll be review and all that kind of stuff, but in the context of the actual evaluation process, I would love to see the process involve parents and students more.
Jennifer D. Granza?
definitely support it being a part of a feedback loop and evaluation of a teacher. I don't know if I think for it to be part of a formal evaluation, it would have to go into the contract. It would have to be, we would have to look at how we're officially evaluating teachers. But I think that it's another data point. It's another bit of information that is really helpful for teachers, especially when you look at it across all the data. So you can see how students are evaluating.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you for letting me horn in on your question. Let's go to Coyote. Kai?
All right. So, as evidenced by the 3 recent sexual misconduct cases at Palo Alto High School, it's obvious that stronger teacher behavior policies are needed. But the question is, how would you protect the students from sexual harassment while maintaining the personalized academic relationship between teacher and student that fosters better learning?
All right. 1 minute responses. Todd Collins?
I don't think those things are in conflict at all. I don't think that teacher behavior policy and protecting students from sexual harassment and unwanted attention is in any way interferes with the personal relationship that we strive to have between our educators and our students. We have, I believe, implemented or rolled out new teacher education around behavior policy, and specifically in response to the incidents that you're talking about. We need to take that very, very seriously. I think that is a tremendous weakness and a tremendous issue in our district, and we really can't let it continue to happen.
Jennifer D. Brandt?
Thank you. Well, student safety is priority number 1. If students aren't safe, they are certainly not in an environment where they can learn. So it is extremely important that we make sure we keep students safe. I agree with Mr. Collins that I don't think that those are in conflict with one another. I think that we need to make sure that we, as a district, make it very clear to teachers what those boundaries are and what the expectations are, and follow through with that. So hopefully those close relationships can still be formed, and teachers can get to know their students quite well, but people know what are appropriate and inappropriate things. And we need to make sure that when we hire teachers, we're doing thorough background checks and thorough investigations into whether or not they should be with kids.
Jacob Burr?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just having a no tolerance policy. These teachers should be dealt with severely as needed, and making sure that there is clear policies that are updated, which sounds like a lot of it's already happening. I think I'm just going to leave it there.
All right. That takes us to Heidi Emberling.
So when I was on the board policy review committee, I think it was 2 years ago, we created a very strong sexual harassment policy that guides our work around this area. We introduced mandatory sexual harassment training. I think the next steps are going to be to train and educate students around understanding their own feelings of uncomfortableness, or if they feel any sort of stress whatsoever, who can they go to, find a safe adult, but how to recognize those sorts of things that cross lines. And then I also think there's a whole interesting area around social media. This is a new sort of area for us to explore. Should teachers be friending students on Facebook? You know, sort of how do we create Facebook groups for certain classes, right, to exchange homework and to do projects with each other, and teachers are sometimes a part of those groups and sometimes not, and then the question is, should we be encouraging that in a social media realm? So there's a lot to explore around this that we will continue to do.
And
So sorry.
Elizabeth Caswell.
Well, we take student safety incredibly seriously, and we worked on some policies 2 years ago, and we worked on training, but one thing that we do need to do is make sure that what is written down is very understandable and is very accessible, both for teachers and for staff, more than both, and for students. If everybody understands what the expectations are, then we all understand when those expectations, when the line has been crossed. I think we have a little work to do around there. There are some things that, you can say the door always has to be open if you're working with a student. But you need to be clear. The students need to know that as well. It can't just be training for the staff. So I think we have some work to do around that and making sure that our training is consistent and our written policies are in places where everybody can find them and read them and understand them very easily. To the students' question, it is important that our teachers can be support for students, and we don't want them too scared to have good teaching relationships, supportive teaching relationships.
Kai, does that answer your question? Yes. Can I take a quick follow-up?
Go for it.
Is it appropriate for a male teacher to give a female high school student a hug on campus in the middle of the day? Melissa Baton-Caswell?
I would say it's not.
Jacob Rara?
It really has to do with the interaction and why the hug is being given, but it should be very, be very rare.
Todd Collins?
No.
Heidi Emberling?
I wouldn't limit it to just male teachers with female students. You could also say female teachers with male students. I think personal contact that's unwanted or uncomfortable or even could be perceived that way is not okay.
Jennifer D. Brianza?
I would say no and include male with male and female with female. I mean, inappropriate contact it's not necessary in the middle of the school day with any.
All right, back to Matthew Hamilton at the Gun Oracle. Second question, Matthew.
Some gun students feel that the decision to eliminate zero period and change the bell schedule came from PAUSD administrators who are out of touch with the campus climate. Do you support the elimination of zero period and the new block schedule? And what role should the board have played in these decisions, if any?
Zero period. Heidi Emberling?
All right. Do you want me to handle just zero period or both? Okay.
Can you repeat the question? Sure. Let's have that question one more time, Matthew.
Okay, so some gun students felt that the decision to eliminate zero period and change the bell schedule came from PAUSD administrators who are out of touch with the campus climate. Do you support the elimination of zero period and the new block schedule? And what role should the board have played in these decisions, if any?
Okay. So I think that the zero period conversation was not handled well. I think student voice needs to be front and center when we're talking about students and student schedules. I think the board actually never had a formal agenda item around zero period. We had a lot of conversation about it, but it was not agendized for us to have a conversation about it, and that was unfortunate. I think there was a lot of stress in the community at the same time, however, because of the suicide cluster, and I think sleep came out as something that students weren't getting enough of, and one thing that the research shows is that when students get more sleep, then they're healthier overall. And I think if you started school at 7:30 for a zero period, and then early morning sports also moved up, and so then you were coming at 6:30 for swimming. Anyway, it just felt like, how early is too early to be on campus? I'm a huge fan of the block schedule, however. I think the larger blocks, not having homework in every class every day is great.
All right. Jennifer D. Brianza.
I think that when an issue comes to light in the community, I think sometimes we have a tendency to throw the kitchen sink at it in a panicked way. However, I think that zero period is not a case of that. The research is clear that when you are a teenager, your body clock changes and you become a night owl and you sleep in. And Seattle Public Schools actually just took their entire city and moved all their high schools for a later start time. So although there probably wasn't complete consensus on this, it certainly comes from research, and it is an evidence-based decision. Again, I go back to my work for 15 years in schools and how you go about making changes, and I think that's really important. There were voices that didn't feel heard. There were voices that didn't feel their needs were addressed, and you're never going to please everybody, but I think that the process by which we do things could be different.
Jacob Rara.
Yeah, and going on the process, for me, I'm all about empowering, individual schools, empowering students, and empowering parents. and in the community to be involved in these types of decisions, right? So I feel like what we need is we need to take our, our basic governance systems into the 21st century. I mean, we are in Silicon Valley. Every single decision should be online for the entire community to, advise on and vote on. I mean, it doesn't make any sense not to have that applicable. And I would want to bring participatory democracy and direct democracy into my voting processes and take everybody's ideas into account.
Melissa Caswell.
I think we didn't do the right process for zero period. Zero period is something that impacted a small number of students who didn't have a say. And I think that was inappropriate. I wish we had brought this to the board as an agenda item. It is unusual to have a decision like this made just top down without interaction from the community. And my experience has been when the community is not involved in a decision, then you end up with passive aggressive behavior. And that's not good. And on the other hand, I think the block schedule did include a lot of people. There were students involved, there were parents involved, there were teachers involved, there were administrators involved, and we had implemented it successfully at the other high school. So I wouldn't say the block schedule was a bad process. I actually think it was quite a good process. And many teachers and students who were scared of it are now really happy we have it. So that would be an example of a better process for me.
Todd Collins?
I wish I had gone before Melissa, because I was going to say pretty much the same things that she just said. Zero period, clearly the process was not handled well. And I think having kids at gun, I heard loud and clear how unhappy they were with the lack of attention to student voice and and what students felt was they were led to believe that they would have a say and then absolutely did not. There were good health reasons, I think, and good safety reasons for implementing the policy, and I support it. But I think the process was not a good process. As Melissa said, I think the block schedule process was a different process. And I do think that was much better handled through the committee and through the various stakeholders, and that did seem like an appropriate process to me.
All right. Coyote, one more question?
Yep. All right. So the differences between gun and Pali are significant. I'm going to give a list of those differences, and then the real question will be at the end. So Pali and gun have different bell schedules, and Pali offers additional courses such as U.S. Foreign Policy Honors, Intro to Gender Studies, and Ethics Studies that gun does not. Pali students may also pursue a social justice pathway or sports career pathway, providing students with the opportunities that gun students do not have. And finally, in a more frivolous example, students at Pali are allowed to put the college emblem on their caps, while gun students are prohibited from doing so. And so my question to you is, many decisions at each school are made by the respective administrations, but to what degree should the school board act to ensure equitable education between the Palo Alto high schools?
All right. Jennifer D. Brienza.
Thank you. I think you bring up a really important point, and this is something, as a parent of elementary school children, I hear a lot with elementary school parents, that if they really wanted an immersion program and they got waitlisted and couldn't do it, or they really wanted to be in a particular school in a particular program and there maybe wasn't access to it. So I haven't heard it as much at the high school level, but I think you brought up some really good examples. If there is a desire for those other programs at other schools, I think we have to really look at how we can get equitable access to these programs. We have to be mindful at the same time of kids moving all about the city, right? The traffic and the commutes and whatnot. So it's not necessarily just, hey, pick a program and go to that school. But if there is a desire for something like a social justice pathway at Gunn, I think we also need to look at, are there teachers who are interested in teaching it? Or can we recruit some to teach it? Or can we train some to teach it? And if so, offer that down there as well if there is a desire for it. I do think that there are certain best practices that we have and opportunities for innovation, and we need to make sure there's equal access to them.
Thank you very much. Our next responder is Jake Cabrera. Jake.
I think the first thing I'll just say is that, I personally I don't think any of us want every school to be exactly the same. We don't want a cookie cutter experience. But what does need to have equitable interaction is the resources that are available to the different schools to implement the types of programs that they want. So, if we can take the specific programs, you listed a lot of things for Pali, and what does Gunn have that Pali doesn't? And so it's like, if you look at what those resources require, to really dig in to make sure that resources are equitable, so that if Gunn did want to, they could.
I think, as was said before, we don't want the schools to be the same. They don't have to be the same to have parity. I think we do want the schools to have parity and to offer comparable educational opportunities. But that doesn't mean they have to be the same. You left out what I think is one of the most important differences, and that's been a controversial issue the last several years, which is the counseling models between Gunn and Pali, which are obviously quite different. And I think that's an area where over several years we have found that the counseling model at Gunn is not as good as the counseling model at Pali. And I think Gunn is in the process of modifying its counseling model to be more like the one at Pali, reflecting the fact that they've looked at it, examined their own practices, and they've learned. So I think they don't have to be the same in order to be comparable, but I think they can learn from each other.
Melissa Bateman-Caswell?
I believe that our most important value needs to be comparable resources and comparable education. If you live in South Palo Alto, you don't get to choose to go to school in North Palo Alto and vice versa. I mean, there are certainly exceptions, but in general. So we need to make sure we have comparable opportunities, but we also need to make sure that we're trying new things. And sometimes in order to try something, you try it with one teacher or a couple of teachers, and if it's successful, you can roll it across to the other high school. And we have done that. We would not have pathways at Pali for social justice if we hadn't tried Project Lead the Way pathways at Gunn. We would not have the small learning community at Gunn if we hadn't tried Team at Pali. We wouldn't have the Bell schedule the way it is at Gunn if we hadn't done the block schedule at Pali. Now, each school wants it to be the flavor for their school, and that's fine. I've watched the journalism program at Gunn improve dramatically using Pali as a model. I would like to see this happen with counseling, and I'll stop there. I have more to say.
What I've found in this district is that when I first joined the board, I used to say we need to share best practices across the district, and now that I've been here for a little while, now I say we need to grow best practices at each school. Each school likes to feel ownership over their own growth and innovation, and so moving to block scheduling took several years before it was able to be implemented at Gunn, and we were able to add a lot more courses at Pali because of the block scheduling, because you can put more classes into a block schedule than you can if you have 7 classes every day in a regular schedule. So whenever I would say, well, can we add that at Gunn? They would say, well, we don't have time in the master schedule. So we made the schedule change, and then that opens up possibilities for other innovations to happen. I mean, it would be great if we could clone Aaron Angel and Eric Bloom, who started the Pathways program, to start the same exact thing over at Gunn, but these are teacher-driven innovations. They came from excitement that a teacher wanted to share and a class that a teacher wanted to develop, and that's how those were formed.
And thank you very much. Thank you to both of our student journalists. Thank you to Pali Campanile, co-editor-in-chief Coyote. Thank you to Gunn Oracle co-managing editor Matthew Hamilton. And one last question for you two gentlemen. Will your papers be endorsing in this race?
The Oracle will be. The company will probably write an editorial about which candidate we support.
All right. So we look forward to reading your editorial. That takes us to questions from the audience, including those who are watching online. And again, for those who are watching online, questions can be emailed to debate@paweekly.com. We have a healthy complement of questions both from the audience here in the room and from folks online. First pair of questions deals with budget. I'm going to read them both and ask you to respond to both in 60 seconds. In your opinion, does the Palo Alto Unified School District have a budget deficit? Again, in your opinion, does the Palo Alto Unified School District have a budget deficit? And what will you do to ensure that the Palo Alto Unified School District budget is managed effectively so we don't have to backpedal and find areas to cut after the fact? Again, what will you do to ensure that the Palo Alto Unified School District budget is managed effectively? The very first candidate who gets to solve budget problems in 60 seconds is Jake Cabrera.
Well, I mean, if we do have a deficit, we're somewhat mismanaging our money. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're budgeting correctly, where they're engaging through what I would call participatory budgeting the entire community to ensure that our budget process is open, transparent, and that we're actually getting really good, effective final goals and final budgets. As far as like some of the reductions, I mean, I am a proponent that when taxpayers, and I do encourage the taxpayers to increase our budgets, right, for the school board in general, when our taxpayers give the money, that it should be spent on students and the education for students. And I think that large reserves in the context of like 10% or more potentially could be reduced to 3 to 5% in certain contexts if they're just sitting around there for years and years and years and years to prevent some of the cutting.
Heidi Emberling?
So our budget shortfall came in this year from a less than anticipated property tax increase. So this was surprising because of the monthly data trends did not predict that this was going to happen. Plus the Stanford Hospital exemption came in a much higher than was predicted. And in July, as soon as those numbers came in, I called the board together for a study session. So already by the end of July, we were already meeting for the first of 5 budget sessions that we've had. We're going to have the 5th one next Tuesday. My Vice President, Terry Godfrey, and I met with Stanford University and Stanford Hospital. We're meeting with the county assessor this week to put systems in place to make sure that we can make more accurate predictions over time in the future. We are beginning our long-term planning right now. We're going to make decisions about the current year on Tuesday, and then we're going to begin our long-term planning. In the past 4 years, we've added $13 million in programs and resources in our district, and now it's a great time to take stock, do some evaluation, and see how we can avoid a potential ongoing budget deficit.
Jennifer DiBrienza.
Thanks. So, as Ms. Emberling stated, the budget is determined by what taxes that we get, and that can be predicted fairly closely, but certainly not on the dollar. So I think at the end of every year, we find out exactly if we're a little bit short or if we're a little bit up. And I think that if the district tends to budget too conservatively, it doesn't leave us any room to innovate. If we assume that growth is going to be really small, then we don't really have a lot of wiggle room. And if there are some great ideas, we say, in the budget, we're not going to have room for that. If we estimate too high, then what just happened is what happens, and we wind up feeling like we have a deficit, or at least something that we need to make up for. So we do have a deficit right now. What we thought we were going to do, we don't have enough money for. But that brings us back to our priorities. And when you've got your budget, you should be able to look at it and see what your top priorities are. So the district has announced what their 3 goals are for the upcoming year, and that should be clear when we look at the budget when it is when they make whatever adjustments they need to make, what those priorities are.
Thank you very much. Todd Collins?
First, let's understand what happened. The district made a mistake. It wasn't intentional, but it was a mistake. They missed forecast revenue. They then agreed to an over-generous teacher contract and for the first time ever, guaranteed a large raise in advance for the teachers. So despite the biggest revenue year ever, record property tax growth, and a new parcel tax, our district is in the red by almost $5 million. And this isn't the usual cyclical deficit that we have during slow economic times. This is a structural deficit, which will only get worse when growth slows. So, and let's be clear what this is about. This isn't about saving money for its own sake. We're not a business here. This is about putting kids first. And the money we're spending out of reserves right now is money we won't have to put against kids' programs in the future. So what we need to do is move quickly this year, which means right now, to reduce expenses and stop spending reserves. We've added $13 million in non-teacher expenses in the last 4 years. Some of that is important. A lot is not just nice to have. We have to go and revisit those expenses as soon as possible to reduce expenses and stop spending reserves.
And Melissa Baton-Caswell. And we're going to ask to hold that time, please. Melissa Baton-Caswell.
So we have a structural budget deficit that was the result of a mistake that was made. And so what do we need to do? We went back and took a look at what the process was that allowed us to make this mistake, and we've put some new process in place so that will not happen again. We're going to start looking at parcels one by one from Stanford. That said, we need to go forward. We need to use our values in order to make budget adjustments. We've done this in the past. We cut $7 million from the budget in 2009. I'm smiling at someone from the PTA Council who remembers doing that in a time when we had declining revenues and we had growing enrollment. Now we have growing revenues and we have shrinking enrollment. So it should be easier to do when we're talking about $3 to $4 million that we need to cut structurally. I have asked my colleagues, and they have agreed for us to go forward with a more conservative budget, and we are going forward with a more conservative budget forecast. I think this is doable, and it's not fun, but it's doable.
All right. Let's try and squeeze in some questions with 30-second answers.
Oh, my
please.
goodness.
30 seconds. What will you do to ensure quality teachers stay in the district? What will you do to ensure that quality teachers stay in the district? Todd Collins?
I have an idea that I think we should explore, which is building teacher housing on unused school district land, which is being done at multiple sites up and down the peninsula to respond to the cost of housing. And we have several parcels in PAUSD where we could do this and offer bargain housing to our teachers to have them live in our community. I think this is something the district should explore.
Jennifer D. Branza?
I agree that we need to look at possibilities in ways of incentivizing our teachers and attracting high-quality teachers because there's only so much that we can pay them. Right now, our budget is 85% goes to teacher compensation, and there's only so much higher it can go, and it's not rising as fast as prices are rising. So I think housing, I think we can also continue to look at the insurance plans that they have and try to find if there's ways to be more efficient in those and make it a supportive place to work, a place they want to work, even if we aren't the top paying, to make it a place they want to be.
Melissa Baton Caswell.
We have to make this a great place to work and to stay for your career. We have had the luxury of having hundreds of applicants for every job that we have open, and that's just not true anymore. There's a teacher shortage. So we need to focus on career development. So if a teacher is teaching 3rd grade and wants to teach 10th grade, they can do that. We need to focus on professional development. We need to pay in the top 5 in the area so that we get the best teachers. And we need to work regionally to figure out housing options that make sense. I don't think we'll ever be a great landlord, so we need other options that might make sense.
Heidi Emberling?
I agree. We need competitive compensation. We have districts in our surrounding districts that are trying to steal our best teachers. We have to make sure that we want to keep them here and stay a destination district for excellent teachers. We have to be able to recruit and retain a wide diversity of teachers. We have to mentor, we have to evaluate, we have to support them in their jobs. We put aside $5 million in a professional development fund, particularly to offer continuing ongoing improvement. Out of time.
All right. And Jacob Cabrera.
The reality is that the cost of living in this area is over $100,000 a year. It's going towards $150,000 a year. I'm definitely open to having those types of conversations, although it's difficult with the community to keep good teachers. I also feel like what's the most important is being innovative as a community, and I want to see us as high schools evolve to be more university-like. Empower our students to be more flexible and have a wonderful relationship with Stanford growing up.
All right. Thank you all very much. Now, in 30 seconds, what's your position with respect to the Me Too policy with respect to salary increases for district administrators? Would you vote to continue the status quo, or would you change that process? Again, what's your position with respect to the Me Too policy with respect to salary increases for district administrators? Would you vote to continue the status quo, or would you change the process? Allow me to scrunch you all up, put you back in the basket. Heidi Emberling.
Our principals are our instructional leads on our site. They're responsible, and research has shown that they're responsible for academic achievement that happens in students. That the Me Too clauses, which we've had in our district, we need to look at comparable salaries around our area and see what other districts are paying top administrators and make sure that we're competitive. We want to attract the best and the brightest instructional leads on our sites. They set the tone for climate, they set the tone for teacher professional development, and we have to make sure that they want to stay in our district as well.
Thank you. Jay Cabrera?
Yeah, I'm definitely into reducing administrative costs in general and focusing on funding students. In that context, I also am a big fan of just generally transparency when it comes to people's salaries, which can sometimes be controversial. But the most important thing is having fair pay, not necessarily having good negotiation skills. And that equal pay between all types of people, men, women, et cetera, et cetera.
Todd Collins?
I would vote to rescind all or most of the annual Me Too administrator raises that have been given, and certainly change our policy going forward. As Ms. Emberling mentioned, we need data, but we have the data. The staff went out and gathered comparable data for our administrative positions and found they were even more competitive than our teachers. We're in the top 3 in virtually all positions compared to neighboring districts. So Me Too district, Me Too raises have to go.
Jennifer DiBrienza?
I'm not in support of Me Too raises. I agree with Ms. Emberling that our instructional leaders at the site level are one of the most important things that affect a student's experience in the school. But I think that we do need to collect the data before we make those decisions, and that should happen each time we're looking, and we should see what is competitive out there, and we should pay what we need to pay to stay competitive. But to automatically give those raises is not a wise idea.
And Melissa Baton-Caswell.
There is an administrative shortage along with the teacher shortage right now. That said, I think in our district office, the people that are not instructional leaders should have evaluations that impact what their salary increases are. I think having just plain straight Me Too doesn't really make sense. And actually in the past, we did tie administrative at the district office salaries to an evaluation process. We might not have done it in the greatest way possible, and we could do it better, but I think we need to look at that. I believe there's a lot of...
Thank you for that answer. One more sentence.
Go ahead.
Okay, I believe that we have a lot of structural operational costs that we could take out that would make our administrators more effective in the district office.
In 30 seconds, is there any place for education about citizenship in the midst of the clamor for tech and startup and financial education? What about the importance of humanities education? Again, is there any place for education for citizenship in the midst of the clamor for tech and startup and financial education? What about the importance of humanities education? What do you think, Todd Collins?
I majored in philosophy in college. I have a daughter who graduated from Gunn High School who is now a history major, and another who is a psychology major. I am very, very proud of my kids. I think citizenship and study of the humanities and social sciences is absolutely vital to our future as a society, and I think our best and brightest need to study that as well as the engineering and science and math disciplines.
Thank you. Jennifer DiBrienza?
Yes. When this country was formed, it took a stand to create an educated citizenry and left that up to the states to do. And I think that is a task that is no less important today than it was back then. It is a smaller world we live in now due to technology, and I think that it is important that we educate our students in a wide variety of ways, not just in technology, although that is obviously an important part. So I think we have to keep each of these programs strong, the humanities, as well as teaching our students how to be members of society.
Melissa Baton-Caswell?
I think that the current situation in our country shows the need for educating our students on citizenship and how to respect others. And that to me is different than humanities, which I also think is very important. I think we want to have well-rounded adults in our community. We want well-rounded leaders. And if everybody only goes and studies computer science and math, we're going to have a very unbalanced society. My background's in psychology, by the way. But I think that the civics education needs to really happen, and we need to make it a requirement.
Heidi Emberling, and then Jacob Burr.
Sure, I agree. Citizenship obviously needs to be studied. We have a community service requirement. Our students are participating in the community as part of this program and project. They have great ideas that they can share. We've granted the students student preferential vote for our student board members, so they can now vote on all of the things that come before the board. This is a way in which students can start to feel ownership over decisions that are going on in their community, and I think that will ignite an interest in continuing to have an influence over their decisions made in their communities.
Jacob
Our society is already unbalanced. I feel like the number one thing that is going to empower citizenship is to lower the voting age to 15 years and make sure that all students have 3 years of civic engagement in high school, because that will literally change the way they look at our society. From there, the direction that our society is going is that science is literally becoming the new liberal arts. We are defunding the liberal arts already gone, right? We're defunding science, and all that's going to be left is computer science and computer engineering. We need to teach kids computer coding from 3rd grade on, and we need to rechange our entire society.
All right. One last question from the online viewers, and then we're going to go to closing statements. And the question online is, the student population is increasingly diverse. What will you do to ensure all families feel connected to the district and are able to voice concerns without fear? Again, the student population is increasingly diverse. What will you do to ensure that all families feel connected to the district and are able to voice concerns without fear? 30 seconds. Heidi Emberling?
We need to create a parent advisory group that is ongoing in our community. I saw this at the California School Boards Association conference for the past 2 years. There are some districts, Berkeley Unified included, where they have these PAGs, parent advisory groups, that meet, and they have representatives from all different interest groups in the community, and they meet regularly to make sure you're on your strategic plan goals, your LCAP goals, which are the local control accountability plan for budgeting. And it's an ongoing group that parents can join as issues come up too. So that's what I would like to add in our district.
Todd Collins?
I agree. I think having parent groups organized around our diverse communities is exceptionally valuable. We currently have one called the Palo Alto Chinese Parents Club, which I think does unbelievable work integrating the interests and needs of those Chinese, particularly immigrant parents, into the schools and to the mainstream community. We need more like that.
Jennifer D. Brands up.
I think that we have to continue to work to find different ways for families to engage. Some, it is unrealistic for them to get into school or to a school board meeting ever, but there has to be an effective way for them to communicate concerns or enthusiasm or their hopes. The family advisory groups are, I think, a great idea, and thinking about the ways that people can engage in making sure that language is not a barrier for people to participate.
Elizabeth Caswell?
We need to reach out to the community. For the last 9 years that I've been on the board, anyone who knows me knows that I'm out and about in the community on a regular basis, trying to make sure that I'm hearing from a wide range of constituents. But that's not enough. I think it's nice to have community groups, but you need to have some way for people that don't have the time to be able to participate. And we need to make sure that our teachers and administrators represent the diversity that we have in our community. I mean, if 40% of our community is Asian, we need to have 40% of our teachers and 40% of our administrators Asian as well. And I'm just using that as an example for any of the communities that we have as part of our PAUSD.
Jacob Herrera?
My vision is making our high schools cultural epicenters of our communities, and we need to invite our families and invite our diverse range of experiences to our community cultural centers of our high schools and bring adult education and be sharing with each other and really rethink what our community educational systems can be. I also feel it's so important to not just have advisory groups. We need to implement in the 21st century direct online voting of every single issue that comes to the school board. It needs to be online for direct voting, and I am completely supportive of people doing that and also having participatory meetings where people can interact with school board members.
All right, thank you very much. It's time now for closing comments from members, from candidates for the Board of Supervisors. I'm having a long night too. It is. Please wait until I'm termed out. All right. Thank you very much. It's time now for closing comments from candidates for the Board of Education here in Palo Alto. We are going to allow 90 seconds, and that is, of course, candidates, up to you to use as you would like. That being said, I'm going to pay you a compliment first, and then I'm going to turn it over on you. The compliment is, we only get to pick 3 people to be on the Palo Alto School Board. I'm inclined to think that there are more than 3 very capable people who could serve on the Palo Alto School Board among this group of 5. So I hope in your closing comments you'll give us some indication of what it is that you bring that would make you uniquely well suited to serve or serve again on the Palo Alto School Board. Again, the 90 seconds is yours. We're going to hear first from Todd Collins.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, other moderators and our audience and fellow candidates. We have great schools with great teachers, great aides, great students, and great families. And I'm running for school board to help protect and strengthen the schools that we have. As I think you've heard, I have several goals that I think the community and frankly all the candidates share. Maintain high student achievement and make it possible for every student. Continue to address the minority achievement gap. Continue to address social and emotional well-being and student stress. Nurture innovation and provide choice. And maintain reasonable class sizes. But to do any of those at the level that we aspire to, we need to get and keep our budget under control. A few years ago, I helped address a key issue with our bond program. We'd made a mistake and we'd headed down a wrong track. I was able to see it, get other people involved, educate and persuade the board, and change our direction. In the end, almost everyone agreed, and that effort saved our taxpayers $850 million and protected our ability to issue bonds in the future. I want to bring that same independent thinking and constructive problem solving to our budget issues and frankly to all the issues that we face. Because the issues are going to change over time, they always do, but my approach and values will not. Kids come first, quality teachers are a close second, and I'll bring a spirit of constructive, data-driven problem solving to every issue with candor and transparency in everything I do. So I ask for your support and your vote on November 8th.
Thank you very much. Jennifer DiBrienza.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Supervisor Smidian and Palo Alto Weekly. I decided to run for the board this spring when I was at a school board meeting and there was one of many conversations happening, and one of the school board members said, I'm not a K-12 educator. None of us are K-12 educators. And I thought, I'm a K-12 educator. I have 25 years of education experience. I started out as a classroom teacher in the public schools, and I have since gotten my PhD in mathematics education at Stanford. And since I left the classroom, as I stated earlier, I've been an educator in schools and districts big and small, and helping them make change in various ways. And I've learned a lot in each of those scenarios, and I think as a classroom teacher, I bring the lens of knowing how a school board policy will affect kids in classrooms in a way that maybe people who haven't been in the classroom don't really know. I think that I bring the experience in my PhD program in spending a lot of time looking at data and research and being able to evaluate the quality of the data and what we can infer from it. And I think even perhaps most significantly in the work I've done since I left the classroom, looking at systems and looking at how systems change and how to effectively help systems change. And I think that, as Mr. Collins said, the issues before the board are going to constantly change, but the way I will approach them will stay the same, listening to all the stakeholders and yeah, I just want to say something about the budget. I also think that that is really important. We have to stay fiscally sound, and I think that's going to force us to look at our priorities and make difficult choices.
Thank you very much. Heidi Emberling?
It's been a great honor to serve this community for the past 4 years as your school board representative, and I also consider it a tremendous responsibility. It's my priority that we provide educational experiences that meet the diverse needs of our students. We want to focus on academic achievement and on building skills that promote a healthy, balanced life. It's my priority to look at our district through a lens of equity. We want to provide safe and welcoming schools and increase access and opportunity for every student, regardless of a student's gender identity, ethnic background, special needs, or socioeconomic status. We must not be afraid to delve deeply into disaggregated achievement data and analyze our successes and continued challenges. And it's my priority to continue to invest in our excellent teachers who inspire, guide, and connect with our students every day. I've been an educator and child development specialist at Parents Place for the past 11 years. I have 2 students in our district, a 10th grader at Gunn High School and an 8th grader at Terman Middle School. I've been an active community volunteer for the past decade. I'm uniquely positioned to understand the strengths and challenges of our district and collaborate with our amazing teachers, staff, passionate Palo Alto families to make a meaningful and positive impact on our students' experiences. Our superintendent always reminds us that students should leave high school with the same curiosity and joy of learning with which they began kindergarten, and I couldn't agree with that more. So thank you so much.
Melissa Baton-Caswell.
This year, PAUSD was rated the best school district in California. That doesn't just happen. It happens because of stewardship. Over my 9 years on the board, I have been passionate about allocating our resources to ensure that each and every student gets a top quality education. I've promoted all students' full academic and social development. I've encouraged student engagement and championed policies to build student skills for success in this changing world. As your trustee, I listen carefully to thousands of students, parents, and teachers. When crisis came, I supported changes to our counseling, student connectedness, and wellness programs, and I encouraged our community and schools to work together on behalf of our students. Before joining our board, I was a leading community volunteer in roles that included president of the district-wide PTA Council. In addition to my years as an active community volunteer, I have an AB and MBA from Dartmouth College and 16 plus years of leadership in roles in finance, management, and strategic planning. We have a great district, but we can't rest on our laurels. We have a responsibility to provide continual improvement. People move here for our schools, and many stretch to live here. Over the next 4 years, we will need to support the academic growth and social-emotional health of every single child, while addressing the continuing challenge of a growing teacher shortage, and we need excellent teachers. And we also have to manage to a conservative budget. To do this well, it will be more important than ever for our community to stand together to protect the excellence that we have worked so hard to create. I look forward to being your elected representative to carry on this profoundly important work, and I thank you for your support over the last 9 years.
Jay Cabrera.
So as you can probably see, I'm into the idea that if we want a government that's for the people, of the people, to the people, we need to elect normal, everyday people who can relate with students, right? So I challenge you guys, like I might not have the same viewpoint as you, but I challenge you guys to rethink what it means to elect the best board and not necessarily the best candidate. Because I feel like what serves the students most, potentially, is to not have all the candidates on the board be the same, right? That what serves the students the most is to have a diversity of viewpoints and a diversity of experiences on the board to make sure that the best can be brought to the students. So in that context, one of the issues that's not brought up here at all is the money, right? No one ever talks about the money for whatever reason. It doesn't come up, right? I am committed to running a small contribution campaign. All contributions have to be under $100, right? And it is a huge mountain to climb. Right? The last school board election, over $100,000 was spent, right? I had spent less than $100. I mean, the only way someone like me is even going to get elected is if the community actually came and rallied together because of how much money is spent in the school board elections, and it's the pink gorilla in the room. So as an example, I hate to, take any person, but we have to, right? Todd Collins here is put $10,000 of his own money into his election. If I had $10,000 just to spend on an election, that would be great. If every person in the community had that kind of money to buy into the election. So it's just we have to rethink our election processes and create a fair structure and really build a system based on values and finding the best ideas. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Before we let folks out the door, I want to say thank you to all of you who have been the audience here tonight and who have been watching online. We have some very dedicated, hardcore community members who have spent 2 hours tonight sitting and listening to these views and the values of the candidates. So thank you to you for doing that. A particular shout out, if I may, to two people who contributed as school board members. I see Diane Reckless in the back and Carolyn Tucker right here in the center. So thank you to both of you. And if I went through the audience and named every former principal, staff member, PTA volunteer, and community contributor, we could be here for a while. So I'm just going to say thank you to all of you who contribute in ways that we oftentimes don't even know you are helping. I also want to say thank you to the Palo Alto Weekly for hosting tonight's Candidates Forum and Palo Alto Online. This is what it means to be a community newspaper. It means more than simply publishing and posting. It means being a community newspaper in the fullest sense of that phrase. So thank you to the Weekly. Thank you to their 2 journalists who participated in the panel questioning. Thank you to the Gunn and Palo Alto High School papers for sending their 2 journalists as well. And as I mentioned earlier this evening, the people we really need to thank are the 5 people up here who are prepared to spend something like 20 hours a week for the next 4 years on the Palo Alto School Board. You have our appreciation and our votes for 3 out of the 5 on Election Day in November. Thank you all very much. Big round of applause.